What is happening at Gamer Dude here, and it's probably no surprise to now learn, officially as it is announced, Sony is shutting down Concord developer Firewalk Studios and the game will permanently remain offline. Now, before I get into the details, I just wanted to say, hey, if you like my videos, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment in the comment section below. Doing all of that does help the channel grow, and hopefully I can get more outside people who don't watch my channel to kind of, get them to watch the channel as well for a little bit. However, it's, recommended through YouTube's algorithm or whatever have you. With that being said though, let's jump into the details, because there have been some interesting murmurs going around just before this was actually announced about how the game was actually being updated on Steam's backend, thinking that there's a potential that this game could potentially come back. So Concord, as we all know, was a massive failure that took about at least $200 million to make, though that number has now been upwards of $400 million due to the additional money that was put in by Sony, and in the end didn't really turn much of a profit. If anything, it kind of failed miserably on the financial side, as it only sold enough to make $1 million, or to be more precise, 25,000 copies. So let's actually look into the details. So Firewalk Studios, Sony-owned developer behind the ill-fated PlayStation shooter Concord, has been shut down, and the game will remain permanently offline despite earlier suggestions that it could return, and this is in relation to the updates being done on Steam's backend. Sony confirmed Firewalk's closure in a post on its website, sharing an email from Sony Interactive Entertainment boss Herman Holtz sent to the company's employees earlier today. We consistently evaluate our games portfolio and our status of our projects to ensure we are meeting near and long-term business priorities, Holtz wrote. As part of our ongoing efforts to strengthen SIE's studio business, we have had to make a difficult decision relating to two of our studios, Neon Koi and Firewalk Studios. Now, I'm not going to get too much into Neon Koi if I'm being completely honest. There's no real need to do that, because they actually got bought by Sony back in 2022 and haven't actually released the product yet. They just got completely shuttered, so there isn't really anything particularly noteworthy there. Expanding beyond PlayStation devices and crafting engaging online experiences alongside our single-player games are key focal areas for us as we evolve our revenue streams, Holtz added. We need to be strategic, though, in bringing our games to new platforms and recognize when our games fall short of meeting player expectations. I mean, at the state in which Concord was in, when Sony bought them from probably Monsters, I do not understand under what circumstance they ever thought that this game was going to do well, but I'm not some rich executive, so let's put it that way. But also, it's worth pointing out that Concord did in fact make a ton of money, despite what I said earlier. The money, however, wasn't made for Sony, it wasn't made for Concord or for Firewalk Studios. No, it was made by probably Monsters, the guys who owned Concord developer Firewalk Studios before Sony purchased them, because they were incubating the project during that period of time. Then probably Monsters sold the studio for $200 million, and ultimately Sony had the burden of the cost of the studio, but also the additional cost for development after the studio was bought and then merged within PlayStation's own ecosystem. So it's worth keeping that in mind as well. Certain aspects of Concord were exceptional, Holtz continued, but others did not land with enough players, and as a result we took the game offline. We spent considerable time these past few months exploring all our options, and after much thought we have determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I want to thank all of Firewalk for the craftsmanship, creative spirit and dedication. And then immediately start saying, oh, and also you're all fired. The PvP first-person shooter genre is a competitive space that's continuously evolving, and unfortunately, we did not hit our targets with this title, Holtz added. We will take the lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capabilities to deliver future growth in this area. And unfortunately, he didn't learn the main lesson, which is that you should stop making live services for Pete's sake. I mean, for us on the PlayStation side, we know Sony for their single player offerings that they give us, and the single player games are usually third person action games, but regardless, they're at least still pretty damn good. When are we going to get a new Uncharted game? I still look at Naughty Dog and think to myself, okay, you've released like, The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2 twice. What are you going to release next? Are you going to just bring, I don't know. Well, they're working on new IP, we know about that much. But the fact of the matter is that there isn't really much more coming out of Sony at the moment. In fact, we don't even know what kind of games they're working on at the moment, if I'm being completely honest. The only one I can remember is Ghost of Yotei, and that's about it, which is the Ghost sequel. So yeah, Concord has been offline since September because it only lasted at most 2 weeks, sold less than 25,000 copies, which is why I said it made at most $1 million, because 25,000 copies, missing a zero, nice. 25,000 copies times the $40 price point, probably looking at $1 million, roughly speaking, just if you look at that math alone. Firewalk, which employed 150 to 170 people, were acquired by Sony last year, so 2023, as part of their massive live service push. I'm not going to go too much into Neon Koi. I just wanted to say, hey, we could have seen this a mile away, but I feel like people are still hopeful that a game can eventually make a return. It's extremely uncommon, if not barely ever heard of, that we see games like Final Fantasy XIV completely release, completely fail, and then completely re-release, and has now become such a beloved title. No Man's Sky, universally hated pariah of a game, it has now found its own form of forgiveness in the form of many updates that have now turned it into a completely different game. That when Hello Games released the trailer for their new game, Light No Fire, it wasn't met with vitriol and hatred. In fact, people welcomed the idea of Hello Games making a new game, because it's clear they had proven themselves with No Man's Sky that they can be trusted to make a game, even if they did stumble so badly that it's not even funny. I can't say for certain Concord could have met a similar fate. We can all hope that it might have been able to, but from its ideas and its inception, I think it failed from the very beginning, by it all accounts being a 6v6 competitive hero shooter. I think this is where they went wrong completely, and myself personally, this is where I completely checked out of the game after learning that particular fact. If it was a first-person shooter that was a single-player title, I would have bought it day one, regardless of what the characters look like, because I like shooters, and single-player shooters at that. Doom, Wolfenstein, whatever have you. So, with all that being said, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 400 subs in the not too distant future, given that my subs don't go down by too much now at this point. But with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.